how to handle emotions that can cripple you. And I'm thinking, that's pretty much what it is when you have intense enough, uncomfortable, that's a mild statement, feelings swooshing through your body, you are temporarily disabled. It's like you are crippled. And we're not talking about just the little, I get kind of a little annoyed at something or a little nervous before some confrontation or conflict with my husband or whatever. These are emotions that for a while make it so you're not the mom that you want to be, you're not the sister, the wife, the person that you would intend to be. It might be even something you'd need to repent of, depending on what you did with that emotion. And you might think that if one of the bents that you have, if you're maybe not so much angry, but you get a lot of anxiety and fear, phobias and those kind of things, you might think, well, I'm not hurting anybody by those things. However, if your anxiety causes you to not have a voice in your relationships, if your anxiety keeps you home so you don't fellowship, so you don't go to church, or you kind of disappear, you lose that sense of who you are, that's a different kind of violence. That's a violence to yourself. It's as though you have physically grabbed your personhood and hidden it, or strangled it, or put it down somewhere, so that God's intention for you as a human being, as a woman in this world, can't be fulfilled because you're hiding. I want you to think about if there have been times, and this may apply to everyone in the room, it probably does at one time or another, when you've had what you would call an overreaction. Now, maybe you are not at a place where you're going to call any of that an overreaction. You're going to say it's perfectly justified. It is absolutely, anybody in this circumstance would have a huge reaction to it. So go by feedback from other people. Are your kids, your husband, somebody else saying, no, I think that's an overreaction? Don't just dismiss that. Look at that, because when we have an overreaction emotionally to something, might be by your own judgment or by somebody else saying you better look at this, an overreaction is always an old reaction. I want to say that again. An overreaction is always an old reaction. What I mean by that is that there's something in the here and now that provoked anger, let's say, or a big fear. There's something here and now that we can point to, that there's something that happened that, yes, maybe everybody would be angry, upset, annoyed, at least frustrated about. But the excess feeling that somehow swooshed in, whether it's fear or whether it's greater anger and just, almost blinded you, it was that strong, that excess is something left over. There's a storage tank in your heart, somewhere in there invisibly, holding reactions to something. And if a storage tank has been filled up with things that would have normally been anger producing, and you didn't deal with them, they're just there. Maybe you didn't have permission. Maybe they're things from childhood when there's no way that anybody would have understood what you were angry about. You might have even been punished if you were angry. Or let's say you had fears that you couldn't voice and find any comfort for. Just get over it, or don't be a baby, or whatever it might have been. All those things that are unlooked at, unprocessed, that sort of have the flavor of the current thing that happens. It's as though there's this pipe that's just connected to the past, and you feel a little bit of anger, and whoosh, there comes this old anger fueling it. If that's your issue, if you find that things are swooshing in that just hit you out of the blue, that is worth looking at. And the intensity of it is equal to how old you were. Now, it's an inverse relationship. What that means is the more intense your feelings are, that are this overreaction of fear, overreaction of anger, insecurity, whatever it might be, the more intense the feelings, the younger you were when the wound or the deficit or the trauma happened to us. So we look at the past, not just to dig up stuff, but we look at the past in order to find out what still controls us, what still has a hold over us from the past. And when you say, process it, what does that mean? It means whatever steps are useful to you to help understand what happened, to explore it. And this might seem strange, but you need to identify and name it. Once you can name what happened or identify, oh, I was humiliated in 4th grade when I was made to do such and such, and it might not have been someone with an evil motive toward you, just a very difficult situation that you, looking back on it, you could see it from a different perspective, but as a kid, it was huge. All of those things, it's important to talk about it with somebody, with a friend, with your own journal, with the Lord, with a therapist, with a pastor, somewhere that you can begin to write out or talk out, go on a walk and talk to God, where you can start to make sense.